The world always tells you that love can save you. What they never tell you is how love can also destroy you in the exact same breath. I learned that in a place where no sunlight ever reached, buried under concrete and government silence, where every heartbeat felt like stolen time, Ethan and I weren't supposed to exist together. Not like this. Not in that lab, not in that secret. He wasn't supposed to be carrying the impossible, and I wasn't supposed to be the one holding on to him as if he were my only oxygen. But here we were, two men who found something too rare to be ignored, even when the world demanded we erase it. The lab was never meant for love. It was built for experiments, sterile corridors echoing with footsteps, and the hum of machines analyzing blood, genes, and possibilities no one dared to speak of outside those steel doors. I worked here because I believed in science. Ethan was here because they needed his body. They called him a subject, a specimen, but to me, he was the only thing human in that whole underground prison. I still remember the first time he pressed my hand against his stomach. A trembling touch, almost afraid of its own meaning. And then I felt it so faint, so unreal. A flutter of life. Something they swore could never happen, something nature had denied us. But nature doesn't live in cages. It rebels, it twists, it creates miracles. And Ethan was carrying ours. "You shouldn't even be here," he whispered one night, his voice breaking under the weight of too many secrets. His hair was damp from a quick shower, his skin glowing faintly under the fluorescent lights. He looked both fragile and unshakable at once. "If they catch us, they'll erase everything. You, me, this." His hand curled tighter over the small swell beneath his shirt. I wanted to laugh, but it came out more like a broken sob. "They already erased me a long time ago, Ethan. I'm just a name on a list down here. But you," I touched his cheek, my thumb brushing away the tears he didn't want me to see. "You're the only real thing I've ever had." It was insane, dangerous, reckless. But so is every great love story, isn't it? The truth is, the lab wasn't just underground in the literal sense. It buried us emotionally too. Every day was a battle against silence and suspicion. Cameras watched, guards patrolled, and scientists scribbled notes as if people were equations. They thought they were gods, playing with cells, rewriting destinies. But gods don't know what it's like to fear the loss of a heartbeat that doesn't belong to you but somehow feels more yours than your own. And every time Ethan winced, every time he gripped my hand during those hidden contractions that came too soon, too unpredictable, I thought my chest would tear open with the helplessness of it all. "I hate them," he said once, his voice raw, his nails digging into my arm as pain twisted through him. "I hate that they see me as a vessel, nothing more. But when I feel it move, when I feel it alive inside, may forget all of it. I forget the cages, the tests, the fear, because in those moments, it's ours. Just ours. The walls around us didn't care. They only listened, recorded, and stored everything for men in suits who'd never understand. But I understood. God, I understood. So I made a choice. The kind of choice that splits a life into two pieces, before and after. I decided we weren't going to die down here. We weren't going to let them steal our love, or the tiny life that was already defying every law of science written. We started planning. Secret whispers in the dark, scribbled notes hidden beneath mattress seams, stolen access cards that made my hands shake every time I swiped them. The escape wasn't just about freedom. It was about survival. Ethan wasn't just carrying a child, was carrying hope, something neither of us thought we'd ever be allowed to hold. And yet, there were nights I almost gave up. Nights when the alarms blared, when guards searched rooms, when Ethan's body shook too violently, and I thought, this is it, this is where it ends. But every time, he'd look at me, eyes burning with something unbreakable, and whisper, "Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare let them win." I never did, because love, even hidden under concrete and silence, finds a way to roar louder than fear. The alarm lights always looked like blood when they flashed against the steel walls. That night, the whole corridor pulsed with red, the echo of boots hammering above us, and the smell of antiseptic burned in my nose like fire. Ethan's hand clutched mine, trembling, damp with sweat. He tried to keep his breathing steady, but every inhale rattled in his chest. "They're close," he whispered, voice thin, fragile. His free hand pressed protectively against his stomach, a reflex he never seemed aware of, but I noticed every time. I pulled him tighter against me, my back pressed to the cold metal door of the storage room we'd managed to slip into. "I know," I murmured, trying to hide the panic clawing at my own throat. "But they're not going to find us. Not tonight." It wasn't a promise I had any right to make. Not in a place where cameras were buried in ceilings and microphones waited to catch whispers. But Ethan needed hope more than I needed truth, and if lying meant keeping him steady, I would lie until my tongue bled. The footsteps grew fainter, then faded into silence. Only the hum of the fluorescent light above us remained, buzzing like an angry insect. Ethan sagged against me, his forehead pressing to my chest, and for one wild, aching second, the world outside disappeared. "You smell like soap," he said, muffled against my shirt. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. "And you smell like trouble." That earned me a weak chuckle, the kind that made my heart clench. "Then you must be addicted to trouble." "I am," I admitted, brushing his hair back from his damp forehead. "And I don't want to quit." We shouldn't have been joking, not when discovery meant the end of everything. But maybe that's what love is, finding small islands of laughter in oceans of fear. The next day, they strapped Ethan down again. I wasn't allowed in the room, but I could see through the observation glass. His wrists were bound in leather cuffs, his shirt pulled up to expose the curve of his stomach. Electrodes clung to his skin, wires snaking toward machines that chirped and beeped. He looked so small, so breakable, lying there under the surgical lights. The scientists murmured to each other, scribbling notes, their eyes cold and detached. To them, Ethan wasn't a miracle. He was data, a body to dissect, measure, and exploit. My fists clenched so hard my nails cut into my palms. I wanted to storm in, rip the wires out, carry him far away from their clinical cruelty. But all I could do was stand there, pretending to be one of them, pretending not to feel every bolt of fear that shot through me with each cry that slipped from his lips. At one point, his gaze flicked toward the glass. His eyes found mine, even through the reflection. And despite the pain, despite the terror, he smiled. Small, defiant, as if to say, "I'm still here. We're still here." It shattered me and stitched me back together in the same heartbeat. That night, when they finally released him, I snuck into his room. He was lying on his side, curled up, his breath shallow. I slid in beside him, careful not to jostle him, and wrapped my arms around his trembling body. "They're killing you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "They don't care what happens to you, as long as they get their results." His hand found mine, guiding it gently over the small swell of his belly. "But we care," he said softly. His voice was tired, but steady. "And that's what matters. You and me. This little one." I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead to the back of his neck. "I can't let them have you. I can't let them take this away." "Then don't," he whispered. "Promise me." The promise nearly tore my heart in two, because keeping it meant defying everything: the lab, the guards, the system that built this prison of steel. It meant risking his life, the baby's, mine. But in that moment, with his fragile warmth pressed against me, I knew there was no other choice. "I promise," I said, and the words tasted like fire on my tongue. We started stealing pieces of freedom in fragments. A keycard slipped from a distracted guard. A floor plan copied from a file left too carelessly on a desk. Food stashed away, hidden in vents and hollowed-out equipment. Every move was a gamble, every step another chance for discovery. But we didn't have time to be cautious. Ethan was growing heavier, his body working harder every day. The secret inside him wasn't small anymore. It was undeniable. And I knew it was only a matter of time before the scientists decided he wasn't worth keeping alive once the data was harvested. One night, as we sat huddled in the shadows of the storage room, Ethan leaned against my shoulder, his fingers tracing meaningless patterns on my arm. "Do you ever think about what it'll be like outside?" he asked. I swallowed hard. Every damn second. Tell me. So I did. I told him about wide open skies, about sunlight spilling across fields, about air that didn't smell like chemicals, and stars that weren't hidden behind layers of concrete. I told him about a place where no one would chain him to a table, where our child would grow up hearing laughter instead of alarms. His eyes closed as I spoke, a faint smile curving his lips. It sounds like a dream. It's not, I said fiercely, gripping his hand. It's real, and we're going to find it. His lashes fluttered, tears catching in them. I want to believe you. Then believe me, I whispered, because if I stop believing, I'll fall apart. The turning point came sooner than I expected. One morning, I arrived to find chaos in the lab. Alarms blared, red lights flashing. Scientists shouted over each other, papers scattering across the floor. In the center of it all, Ethan was slumped in a chair, his face pale, sweat dripping down his temples. His hands clutched his stomach as if holding something inside from breaking. He's gone into premature labor, one of the doctors barked. Stabilize him. The world tilted. My pulse roared in my ears. I shoved my way through the crowd, ignoring their protests. Ethan's eyes fluttered open, finding mine immediately. His lips trembled as he whispered, "It's too soon." "No," I said, kneeling in front of him, gripping his hands. "You're going to be okay. Both of you." But inside, I was screaming. They strapped him down again, machines humming, drugs pumped into his veins. I stood by, useless, my insides burning with helpless rage. The scientists worked quickly, too quickly, their eyes shining with something more like hunger than concern. They didn't care about Ethan. They cared about the result. Hours bled together. Ethan drifted in and out, sometimes clutching my hand with surprising strength, sometimes too weak to even open his eyes. I whispered to him constantly, desperate for him to hear me. "Stay with me. Don't leave me. You're stronger than they think. We're stronger." At some point, a sharp cry echoed through the room. Not Ethan's. Higher, raw, new. My breath caught. The baby. It was small, too small, but alive. Alive. For a single, miraculous second, joy tore through me like lightning. But it was short-lived. The scientists swooped in, carrying the fragile life away before Ethan even had the chance to hold it. "No!" His voice broke like glass. He tried to sit up, the restraints biting into his wrists. "Give him back. Please." I tried to follow, but a guard shoved me back, his grip bruising on my arm. The baby's cry faded down the hall, swallowed by steel doors. Ethan's scream shredded me. That was the moment I knew. We couldn't wait anymore. We couldn't plan or hesitate. If we didn't leave now, we would never leave at all. I bent over him, my lips pressed to his sweat-damp forehead. "I swear to you, I'll get him back. I swear it." His hand clutched mine with the last of his strength. His eyes burned into me, full of desperation and trust so raw it hurt to look at. "Bring him back to me," he whispered, and I knew I would burn the whole lab to the ground if that's what it took. The silence after the baby's cry was worse than any alarm. It hung in the air like a blade, sharp, merciless. Ethan's chest heaved against the restraints, his face twisted in anguish, tears streaming down his cheeks. I had never seen him break like that, not during the endless tests, not during the nights when fear threatened to suffocate us. But now, with his child stolen from his arms before he could even touch him, he shattered. And I shattered with him. "They'll hurt him," Ethan gasped, his voice hoarse from screaming. "They'll treat him like an experiment, like they treat me. You can't let them." His words dissolved into sobs, racking his frail body. I cupped his face, ignoring the guards shifting uneasily nearby. "I won't. I swear it, Ethan. I'll get him back, no matter what it takes." The guard yanked me back, muttering something about protocol, but I barely heard him. My mind was already racing, spinning through every stolen keycard, every vent, every blind spot in the cameras I had memorized. Planning was over. We were past the point of caution. We needed action. That night, while Ethan lay drugged and half-conscious in the infirmary, I moved. The hallways were quiet, most of the staff gone, the graveyard shift patrolling lazily. I'd learned their patterns when they stopped to smoke in the stairwell, when they dozed in the security booth. My stolen card slid through the doors smoothly, the green light winking at me like a dare. The nursery wasn't a nursery at all. It was a lab within the lab, cold and sterile, with glass cribs instead of warm blankets. Machines beeped rhythmically, wires trailing into tiny bodies. And there, among them, was him, our son. He was impossibly small, his chest rising and falling with fragile determination. But he was alive. His fists curled, his lips parted in a soft, restless sigh. I pressed my hand to the glass, my throat tightening. "Hey, little one," I whispered. "I'm your dad, and I'm getting you out of here." But even as the words left me, I knew I couldn't do it alone. Not yet. Carrying him through the labyrinth of corridors, past the guards, would be suicide. I needed Ethan. We needed each other. So I left with nothing but a promise burning in my chest, and the image of our son's tiny face etched into my memory. When I returned, Ethan stirred weakly, his eyelids fluttering open. "Did you see him?" he whispered, voice faint, broken. I nodded, kneeling beside his bed. "He's alive, Ethan. He's beautiful, strong. He looks like you." Tears slid down his cheeks again, but this time they weren't only grief. There was something else too, hope. Fragile but alive. "Bring him to me," he begged, clutching at my sleeve. "I need to hold him, just once." "You will," I promised, kissing his hand. "But we have to do it together. We have to leave this place. Tonight." His eyes widened, fear flickering in their depths. "Tonight? We're not ready. We'll never be ready," I cut in. "They'll keep him until there's nothing left to study. You know what that means. If we wait, we lose everything." For a moment, silence stretched between us, filled only by the beeping of the monitors around his bed. Then Ethan nodded, determination hardening his gaze. "Then we leave tonight." The escape began in shadows. I slipped him out of his restraints during the nurse's shift change, whispering instructions into his ear. His body trembled from weakness, but his will was iron. We moved slowly, carefully, hiding in alcoves as guards passed, ducking into unused labs when doors opened unexpectedly. Every second felt like stolen time. Finally, we reached the nursery. Ethan's breath hitched when he saw the rows of tiny glass cribs, his eyes locking instantly on the one that held our child. "God!" he whispered, staggering forward, his hand pressed to the glass, trembling. "He's real." I moved quickly, overriding the lock with the stolen card. The lid clicked open, and Ethan reached in with a reverence I'd never seen before. He lifted the baby, cradling him against his chest, tears streaming down his face. "He's so small," he murmured, rocking gently. "But he's perfect." I stood beside him, my throat thick, my hand on his shoulder. "We have to go. Now." Carrying the baby made everything harder. We had to move slower, quieter. Every corner felt like a trap, every flicker of light a spotlight. At one point, footsteps echoed down the hall, too close, too sudden. I shoved Ethan and the baby into a supply closet, pressing myself against the door as two guards passed, their voices low and bored. "Nothing ever happens down here," one said. "It's like guarding a morgue." My heart hammered so loudly I was sure they'd hear it. I glanced back at Ethan, who held our son close, rocking gently to keep him from making a sound. His eyes met mine, wide with fear but blazing with determination. When the footsteps faded, I let out a shaky breath. "We keep moving," I whispered. And we did. We reached the service tunnel's maze of pipes and concrete that led toward the surface. The air grew colder, damper, the hum of machinery fading behind us. For the first time, I tasted freedom in the air. But freedom has a price. An alarm shrieked suddenly, echoing off the walls. Red lights flared to life, bathing the tunnel in warning. They had discovered the escape. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Ethan's hand. We sprinted through the tunnels, the baby's cries rising in fear. Behind us, boots thundered, voices barked orders, guns clattered. The sound chased us like a beast, hungry and relentless. Ethan stumbled, nearly falling, but I caught him, shoving him forward. Keep going. Don't stop. The tunnel split ahead. I chose left, praying it led upward. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered except getting them out. We burst into a maintenance shaft, a ladder stretching toward a hatch above. Moonlight glimmered faintly through the cracks. Go! I urged, pushing Ethan toward it. He shook his head, panic flashing in his eyes. You first? No, I snarled. Climb. I'll cover you. There was no time to argue. With the baby clutched tightly, Ethan began to climb, each movement slow and desperate. I turned back, pulling the stolen pistol from my waistband, my hands shaking. Shadows closed in, voices echoing closer. For the first time in my life I prayed. Not for myself, but for them. The first guard rounded the corner. I fired. The tunnel exploded in noise and chaos. Above me, I heard the hatch creak open. Cold night air spilled down, sharp and clean. A taste of the world we had dreamed of. Ethan's voice drifted back, hoarse but urgent. We're almost out. Please, please come with us. I fired again, the recoil jarring my arm. My heart pounded. My vision blurred with sweat and fear. I could hear the baby's cries, thin but fierce, echoing down from above. I didn't know if we would make it, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would die before I let them take my family back. The night above us was a promise we had never thought we would touch. The hatch hung open, spilling silver moonlight down the shaft, cutting through the shadows like a divine hand reaching out. Ethan's face appeared in that light, pale and desperate, the baby cradled against his chest. Come on, he shouted down, his voice shaking. They're coming, please. The tunnel roared with footsteps and shouts. I fired again, my hands numb, my body running on pure instinct. The guards were too many, their shapes filling the corridor like a tide of shadows. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not here. Not now. Go! I screamed up at Ethan. Run. Don't stop. No matter what you hear. His eyes widened, horror flashing in them. No, not without you. I almost smiled because of course he'd say that. He had always been the stubborn one, the one who clung to me even when I tried to push him away. But this time I needed him to let go. You promised me once you'd never let them win. I shouted, my throat raw. This is how we do it. Get out, Ethan. For him. For us. Tears streaked his face, but he climbed higher, vanishing into the night with our son. For the first time they were free, and I was alone. The fight blurred into chaos. I don't remember how many shots I fired, how many guards fell, how many times I almost lost my footing on the slick concrete. All I remember is the thought pounding in my skull. Buy them time. Buy them freedom. Somewhere above me, I imagined Ethan running across the open field, his bare feet pounding against the earth, his arms clutching the child we had risked everything for. I imagined the moonlight touching his face, the wind kissing his skin, the stars watching over him. That image was enough to keep me standing. But eventually my gun clicked empty. The echo of it was louder than the alarms. The guards closed in, weapons raised, their faces masks of fury. I staggered back against the ladder, my chest heaving, sweat and blood mixing on my skin. And then, in the chaos, something unexpected happened. The alarms cut off. The lights flickered. For a split second, the whole tunnel plunged into silence and darkness. When they came back on, the guards were shouting not at me, but at each other. Something had gone wrong. Somewhere, someone had interfered. And then I heard it. Ethan's voice, faint but fierce, echoing from above. I told you not to leave me. I looked up. He was there at the hatch, his blonde hair wild in the wind, his eyes blazing. In his free hand, he held a wrench stolen, crude, but gripped with the kind of strength that comes only from desperation. And beside him, the silhouette of another man appeared. An old maintenance worker, someone I'd barely noticed during my time in the lab. He was helping Ethan, guiding him, holding the hatch open. The guards froze, their confidence faltering. Because for the first time, the system they served was cracking. We didn't escape in a blaze of glory. We escaped in chaos, in fragments. Ethan pulled me up the ladder with a strength he shouldn't have had, the baby squalling in his other arm. The old worker led us through the fields, past fences and cameras, through shadows only he knew. By the time the lab realized what had happened, we were gone. The air outside was colder than I imagined, sharp and biting, but it was clean. God, it was clean. The stars spread endlessly above us, the moon bright and silent, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without steel walls pressing in. Ethan collapsed into the grass, clutching the baby to his chest, his whole body shaking. I dropped beside him, pulling them both into my arms. We lay there in silence, listening to the sound of our son's cries soften into hiccups, then into tiny breaths. "He's really here," Ethan whispered, his lips brushing my ear. "He's really ours." I pressed my forehead to his, my throat too tight to speak. So I just held him, held them both, and let the night wrap around us. Freedom wasn't easy. We couldn't go back to the world we knew. The government, the scientists, they wouldn't just forget. We had to stay hidden, moving from place to place, relying on strangers who asked no questions and gave us shelter. Sometimes I wondered if we would spend the rest of our lives running. But every time I saw Ethan smiling down at our son, every time I heard the baby's soft coo, I knew it didn't matter. Running was worth it. Hiding was worth it. Because love wasn't supposed to survive in that lab, and yet it had. Our boy grew stronger each day. His fists curled around Ethan's shirt, his tiny eyes blinking open to the world. He laughed for the first time in a broken-down farmhouse in Kansas, and Ethan cried so hard I thought his heart might burst. We named him Samuel. Felt right, like something old, something unshakable. Months later, when the fear had dulled into something livable, Ethan and I sat together on a porch, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. Samuel slept in his arms, his small chest rising and falling against Ethan's heart. "Do you think he'll ever know?" Ethan asked quietly. "Know what? What we went through, what he cost us, what he saved us from." I thought about it for a long time. Maybe one day, but not now. Right now, all he needs to know is that he's loved. That's enough. Ethan smiled, the kind of smile that still made me weak. "You always know what to say." "No," I said, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "I just know what's worth holding on to." We kissed then, slow and lingering, the kind of kiss that wasn't desperate or stolen, but whole, complete. The world could still come for us. Danger could still chase us. But in that moment, we were untouchable. Because we had each other. Because we had him. Because somehow, in a place where love was never meant to exist, we had found it anyway. And we weren't letting go. The underground lab had taken everything from user safety, our freedom, our innocence. But it had also given us something no one could ever erase. Family. And sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, when Samuel's soft breathing filled the room and Ethan's hand rested warm in mine, I realized something I never thought I'd believe again. Love doesn't just survive. It saves. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.